Welcome to the Georgian Surrogacy Podcast, Series 2, Episode 4. I'm Liz Tripodi. Welcome, everybody, wherever you are listening from around the world and whatever platform. It's a pleasure to be back with another podcast episode. And today, I've got a lovely special guest, and her name is Rachel, and she is from Colorado in the United States of America. So I want to welcome Rachel to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Liz.
I am so happy to talk to you, and thanks for reaching out. And that's what we love. We want people to tell their stories so that we can gain more awareness about the surrogacy process in Georgia, and of course, listening to everyone's individual stories because everyone is so different. Rachel, what I love about you is not only have you gone through the surrogacy process in Georgia, but you have now become a support coach for intended parents, which is something that is sorely lacking in our industry. So talk to me, before we get into your journey, talk to me about why you decided to start a support service for intended parents.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, really, the answer to that question has to do with my journey. And as I tell my journey today, I think I'll really focus on the areas where I could have used more support but didn't have it,
Yep.
or the ways that I accessed support, kind of making it up as I go along, hodgepodging,
Yeah.
the universe just kind of showing up at the right time with the right information, and how that was all very, you know, catch as catch can, and I feel really committed to supporting other intended parents to not have to do that, not have to make it up as they go along, not have to just hope to be at the right time at the right place, but to kind of have lots of information, lots of resources, and lots of support for them from the very beginning of the journey all the way through, when their child is a year old, even, because the journey doesn't end.
No, it
it,
certainly doesn't. And I
it
think
really,
that's really important is you're right, the journey doesn't end. And even us as parents, um, you're right. We plod along. We sort of some days we think we know what we're doing. Other days we throw our hands up and we have no clue what we're doing. And it doesn't matter how old you are or whether you're a first time parent or a second time parent, as we're going to learn in your case, it's having that sort of support from someone who has gone through the journey, I think is so important. And your space is based on holistic health and wellness, which I think is something that is so important in this day in age because of everything surrounding mental health and well-being. And I'm a really big supporter of health and well-being services, especially from a holistic point of view, because it is such personalized service and it's a really important space that I think that any type of person can gain something from it.
yeah, absolutely. And, I realized as I was going through my own journey is obviously there's so much support for moms who are pregnant themselves, huge
Yeah.
amounts of support as there should be. And there's even lots of support for surrogate mothers, for gestational carriers. Um, but there's not that much support directed at intended parents. There might be with a particular agency. If you're already signed on with an agency, then there might be some support. But in terms of kind of not necessarily just wedded to one agency, someone who's really going to support an intended parent, there's not much of that out there. So in a way, I feel like I'm kind of I had to create this,
I think it's
create the thing
brilliant.
that I didn't have.
And for anyone that is interested, your website is www.intendedparentsupport coach.com. Or, of course, you can contact me through the podcast or through my social media to get in touch with Rachel directly if that's something that you're interested in. She offers private sessions, workshops, different packages, and right around the world as well. I won't just mention in the US. Rachel has various qualifications in various areas of health, wellness, and psychotherapy. So yeah, I look forward to hoping that we can work together in the future and offer people that support. But let's move on about your story.
Okay.
So tell me, how did it all start that you actually had to turn to surrogacy?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I had a child before my surrogacy journey, and that was in my mid 20s, unexpected pregnancy, and I was a single parent. So my parenting journey was very challenging, and I was going through a lot personally. I went to grad school when my son was little. I got into recovery when my son was little. So I had a lot of challenges raising my first child, and I wasn't really able to really focus on being a parent and raising him in the way that, I wish that I could have looking back. So fast forward many years, and I meet my current husband, and we decided we wanted to try again and have a child together. And for me, that was an opportunity to raise a child with their father because I didn't get that chance with my
Yeah,
first son. So that was a real dream of mine to have that experience. But we were in our late 30s when we met, and I just thought I had tons of time. Like, in our
of
culture, we don't
course.
talk about
Yeah,
menopause, and I was like, oh, that's in my 50s. I've got like a decade at least before I have to even think about that. So we didn't, start right away. And I remember my doctor at the time when I said, oh, we want to have a child, but we're not ready yet. She said, oh, well, you need to freeze some eggs. And I was offended. I was like, how dare you even say that? I'm, 37 years old. I've got tons of time. I just had no clue. I
yeah.
was
Because our
uninformed.
minds don't think that we're old, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
biologically, our bodies are a different story. And you're right, we all fail to forget that.
Yeah, exactly. So I missed out on that opportunity. And, my husband kind of wasn't quite ready to start yet. And we ended up getting married in 2016. And then we were ready. We were ready to start. And at that time I was 42. And we tried that whole year, 12 months in a row, and failed every month. And it was just the most heartbreaking experience. As probably most people listening here know what it's like to struggle with infertility and just want a child so badly and for all the right reasons and have so much to offer. And yet the universe doesn't support that, or my body wasn't supporting that. So it was unexplained infertility. I went and had all the tests. My husband had all the tests, and nobody could explain what was wrong. But we didn't get pregnant for a year. And my mental health really suffered. Little did I know I was also approaching perimenopause, which also makes your mental health
Yeah,
very challenged. So, in addition, I had Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid disorder. So there were all these different factors. And so at the end of that year, I was just beaten to the ground and said, I can't do this anymore. It had really impacted our relationship and, my health and my mental health. And so I said, okay, I'm done. I just have to give up. I have to surrender. This plan, this vision that we had just is not meant to be. And it was, devastating. And I went through so much grief, and I did ceremony and writing and, grief processing, and worked with my therapist and really let it go until 2020. My father-in-law, who we loved dearly, um, got esophageal cancer and passed away
I'm sorry
rather
to hear.
quickly. Yeah, and it was just devastating and more grief on top of COVID,
And that's
on
right.
top of,
2020 was a
yeah,
terrible year as it
it
was. I lost my grandfather in the middle of COVID and only 10 people could go to his funeral. It was a terrible time.
so, so painful. But little did I know, my husband had kept in the back of his mind the idea of surrogacy all all the years after we had let go of trying to have a child. And he had received an inheritance from his father, and that made it suddenly possible. And so he brought it up to me, I want to say in August of 2020. And at first, I was totally shut down to it. There's no way. I don't want some other woman to carry my child, and like all of these like worst case scenarios and jealousy and envy and like all these terrible negative feelings came up. But this little glimmer of like, this is our final chance. This is our last hope. Am I going to throw that away or am I going to open myself to it? So I decided to explore it. And we reached out to, we just Googled, surrogacy, had no idea where to start. And found this lovely woman, Jennifer White, here in the US, and talked to her. And she asked us, like, one of the very first questions she asked is, so do you have your embryos ready? And we were like, huh? I had no idea. We just were not anywhere near that. So we hadn't even really understood how surrogacy works. And we just certainly didn't have an egg donor. I was too old at that point. So it really showed us like how behind we were and how much work we had to do to start to understand
Yeah.
what surrogacy was. Um, so we talked about it a lot. We worked on our relationship a lot. We had gone through a lot with COVID and my father-in-law's illness, and um, started doing weekend couples retreats, just in a house up in the mountains that had been my father-in-law's, and we just started having some really deep conversations about what we wanted and whether this was something we wanted to pursue. And I started looking into international surrogacy mainly because it was less expensive
Yeah, of
than in the US.
course.
And we discovered Georgia, that Georgia does surrogacy. It's, also well regulated and organized and legal and everything. And my husband had always been interested in Georgia. He had just heard about it years before. I had never even heard of it. And so it seemed like this little light went on of like, oh, interesting. Here's this country most people have never heard of, does surrogacy. Let's look into it. So I again just randomly Googled surrogacy in Georgia and kind of randomly
As we
chose.
all do.
Yeah, kind of randomly chose the one that I chose because of the name. It spoke to me, and according to the website, it seemed like it was run by all women, and that spoke to me as well. So that was New Life. And so we reached out to them and started the whole process. So that was like in January of 2021, we started that journey.
So January 21 is that's when you sign then, or did you just start having
So
initial conversations then?
yeah, so initial conversations, as you know, in January, Georgia shuts down for the
Yeah.
holidays. So that was our first obstacle. And then, of course, there was COVID and there were no flights coming in and out. So
Yeah,
that was
because
another
we
obstacle.
left Georgia on the 23rd of December 2020.
Yeah.
And we were really lucky to actually get a flight out. There was, I don't know, 8 people on our flight, I think, from memory.
Wow.
And but friends of ours left middle of Jan, and it was even worse then. It was, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then the other issue is that, my husband and I we had gotten spiritually married. Let's say we had a ceremony, but we hadn't gotten legally married. It didn't seem necessary at the time. Um, and so that was another issue, because in Georgia, you need to be married or prove that you have been together a certain number of years.
yeah,
And so that was another hoop that we had to jump through. And we had to, you know, we ended up going to our bank and having like 10 years of bank statements printed out. And then we had to get them apostilled at the Secretary of State in Colorado, like all of these hoops to jump through. But at the end of that, they said, okay, we'll count you as married.
Yep.
We can move forward. But we, at that time, were not sure what we were going to do about an egg donor. And we actually looked into asking my younger sister, who's quite a bit younger than me, to donate eggs. Um, and that's a whole other separate story that I won't get into, but it turned out that she wasn't a good candidate for
Okay.
donating eggs. And that ended up taking from March to September to figure that
Wow.
out.
Okay.
That used up a lot of our time. So then we worked with New Life and their egg uh, donor egg bank and chose a donor in that way.
And what were your priorities in choosing a donor?
hmm Yeah. So I wanted somebody basically that looked like me.
Yep.
So curly brown hair, brown eyes, and that she had a university degree.
Yep.
So those were the main things. And so I found somebody who I liked and she was available. And so um, we decided to move forward, but we had a couple more blocks along the way and decided to wait until the spring. Really, my husband wanted to go in nicer weather. He didn't want to be in Georgia
Sure.
in like winter. So I'm like, oh, that's such a silly reason to delay, but okay. Um, so come February 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. And that just blows everything up in terms of the whole surrogacy situation with all of the Ukrainian surrogacy programs moving to Georgia. And of course, my own fear that Russia was going to invade Georgia again. So again, this seemed like this huge roadblock and obstacle. But at that point, we had been through so much already. And I just felt like there's no way I'm going to let this stop me. And so we booked our tickets and we went to Georgia in April of 2022. We hadn't signed anything with New Life
Yep.
because I wanted to see what is Georgia like now that, there's a war around the
Sure.
corner in Ukraine and how are people feeling and is everybody stressed? I didn't want our surrogate mother to be under a lot of stress. That's bad for her and our baby.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to see the country with my own eyes before we signed anything. So we went in April of 2022 and had a beautiful time. We really enjoyed the country. We traveled around. We enjoyed the food. We went to New Life a couple of times. We met the egg donor in person and we decided right towards the end of our time there that we were going to move forward. And we went in and
Fantastic.
signed the paperwork. Yeah, it was really an exciting day.
So how long after that, because I know that all the clinics back then all had a very long wait time for surrogates. So how long did you guys have to wait?
Yeah. So, and then we had another hiccup in between even that
Oh,
problem,
of course you
which
did.
was, of course. So, the first IVF cycle didn't work. There were no surviving embryos with that egg
Okay.
donor. So
That
that
is
was
highly
another.
unusual. How old was the donor?
She was in her mid-20s.
Oh, very strange.
I know. Yeah, they didn't, there was no explanation. It was just like, nope, none of them made it. And of course, that was again heartbreaking. And I went through all of the grief again. And I was ready to let it go at that point. I was like, I cannot do this to myself again. And New Life stepped forward and they said, we feel so badly about this. We will pay for the next egg donor IVF cycle.
Yeah,
So
because
choose another
it is
donor.
an unusual situation for the, yeah.
Yeah, that we didn't get any embryos. So I said, okay, I'll go through it one more time. And we hadn't signed the gold package, the guaranteed package, partly. So at this point that we were all doing this, my husband and I were 49 years old, and we just thought this can't drag on for years.
Well, by this stage, it was already 7 years because you'd said 42 at, you
Yeah.
know, seven. That's all. Okay.
Yeah. So we just said, if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. We're not going to do the guaranteed package. So, but New Life said, okay, we'll do one more, we'll give you one more chance. So that time we got two embryos. Again, not a terrible large amount, but we got two and we were ecstatic. Um, But then we ran into the problem of, oh, there's no surrogates
Mm,
because everybody has come to Georgia for surrogacy. And so then another, I'm like tearing my hair out. Okay, the universe doesn't want this to happen. And we were actually about to move our whole surrogacy program to Mexico because
okay.
New Life has a chapter in Mexico. And just as we were exploring that and getting ready to do that, we got an email. We have a surrogate. Do you want to meet her? And so, of course, we said yes. And we met her via WhatsApp. She didn't speak English. So the agency coordinator translated for us. And, you know, from what we could tell, we liked her. It's hard to know, they send you like not that much information. But she was a nurse, in her mid-20s. She had had a child.
Mhm.
So we met with her, and honestly, we just didn't feel like we had that many options. We didn't know when we were going to get
Yeah, of course.
another surrogate match. So we said okay, and we signed the paperwork. We had wanted originally both embryos to be transferred,
Were they
and go.
frozen as two?
Um, were the embryos frozen?
Yeah. Did they freeze
Yes.
yeah, they did. Okay.
They did, yeah, because the embryos were created in like or July, and
Mhm.
this was October that
Okay.
we got the match. So we had originally wanted, yeah, both to be transferred and try for twins, and then the surrogate said she wasn't comfortable doing that, and so
Okay.
again, it felt like okay, we don't have a lot of options here. We're willing to trust that and keep going. So the transfer happened October of 2022. And hallelujah, we got, news 10 days later that she was pregnant. And it was just a miracle. But also it was kind of surreal because here
Yeah.
she is across the world and we don't speak the same language. And, there's a time difference barrier and there's all these barriers.
And I think after all these years that you've had all these roadblocks,
Yeah.
you like you said, it's surreal, but you find it so hard to believe, and it's almost like I felt the same as you, but I felt like my body almost had an out of body experience when I heard the news that it was positive, because we'd never heard a positive before. And I
Mhm.
had spoken about that in the previous podcast, but it was the weirdest feeling.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's all the fear that comes with it right away.
Yes.
Well, what if she loses it tomorrow or the next day or the next day? It's just like so much out of your hands and out
Every
of your
week you just
control.
keep hoping, hang on, please stick, HCG levels, please rise. Like, you're banking on so much. And I think the ironic thing is, what people forget is that when you fall pregnant naturally, by the time you find out you're pregnant, I think you're 6 weeks.
Right.
But for us as intended parents, we're finding out at the 10-day mark, which is so long to go until you get to the 6 weeks, then the 8 weeks, then like, it feels like forever.
It's so much waiting. It's so much waiting all through the whole process. And
So
that's,
how was the first trimester? How did she go?
yeah, she did okay. She had a hematoma at the beginning.
Oh
So
yeah,
they put
ours
her
too. Yep.
Okay, yeah, so they put her on some medication and I asked, could you please take a photo of every medication and supplement that you're on? I want to see it. But of
Yep.
course, it was all either in Russian or Georgian, so
Oh,
I couldn't
yep.
really understand what it was anyway. And it's those sorts of things that are, a challenge about international surrogacy. And so that's one of the things that I want to support people with is they're thinking about surrogacy is, it's just good to know what you're signing up for when you do an international journey. There are these things that you just wouldn't have thought of in advance. So, but we just did our best. We met with her every 2 or 3 weeks for every ultrasound appointment.
Yep.
After every appointment, well, one, she would take a video of the ultrasound, which
Yep.
was like wonderful. And then we met with her with the agency coordinator translating and we just got to know each other and it was a little awkward and a little difficult and I feel like sometimes certain like Georgians don't smile a whole lot and I'm like, is she like
Yeah.
mad or sad or tired or like it was so hard to read
Yeah.
her in some But over time, yeah, we built a nice bond. Both of our birthdays are in January. We're both Capricorns.
Yeah.
She was open to the music that I wanted to send her, so I
Oh, that's
sent her,
lovely.
YouTube videos and music that was important to me from my yoga tradition, and
Yeah.
she was open to listening to those things. So, and we did Google Translate. Many times agencies will say don't have direct contact with the surrogate, which is
Yep.
understandable. And I know there have been, bad experiences that way. And at first we would always include our agency coordinator, but then as we kind of got more confident and comfortable with each other, then I just started directly Google sending, messages and things to her. And that worked out, it all was fine.
Yep.
So that was yeah, October, November, and then January of 2023, we were into the second trimester, and we decided to let people know. So I decided we wanted to start writing a blog
Yep.
to update people and everything that was going on, and spread the news as well. And
And
that's one of the things.
I've read some of your blog posts, and they're it's really fantastic. I really enjoy reading it. And I think as well, from someone who's been through the journey, I remember one of the posts that you had written about climbing up the mountain and taking it all in and just breathing, and couldn't believe that you had, made it to this point. And then, you get the call and it was just, but it was, yeah, I really enjoyed. What's the website for the blog?
Yeah, so it's actually on
The link?
intendedparentsupportcoach.com.
Yep.
Yep, at the on the footer of the website, actually, I put the link to the blog so you can subscribe and get all of the posts. There's
And how
23
did
today.
friends and family react?
Yeah, super supportive. And this was part of my reason for doing it is I wanted to start creating a village because, here my husband and I were going to be 50 by the time our child was born. And none of our friends had children. So we knew how important it was to try to create a village of support. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to write the blog and just kind of include people, enroll people in our journey so that they could understand and be excited with us and for us.
That's lovely. Did you have any negative comments?
Never, no,
Great.
and I was careful about who I shared it with, but
Yeah.
still, I think we shared it with there were probably 50 people that we shared it with, and then other people started subscribing as well. So um it got out there, and nope, they just either people didn't say anything or they were supportive, so I appreciated that.
That's lovely. And second and um third trimesters, medically wise, all went well?
Yeah, so yeah, overall, until about May, and I'll get to there. There's a couple of pieces along the way I wanted to share about. So in February, my youngest sister flew out from Massachusetts, and you remember I told you about the sister who was going
Yeah.
to be our egg donor? Well, she got pregnant.
Wow.
um, she got her positive pregnancy test the same day we got notification that we had two embryos.
Oh,
I know. So that was
the
just a crazy
universe.
universe working together. So my pregnant sister and my youngest sister and we had a gathering on about the 120th day of gestation in the Kundalini yoga tradition.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like a special day, um, where the idea is that that's when the soul enters the body of the baby.
Okay.
So we had a gathering, a ceremony, and it was just a lovely
Is that
experience.
known as Kundalini rising?
Well, so the word Kundalini, so Kundalini yoga is a particular form of yoga, and Kundalini is like the basic life force energy in our
Okay.
bodies. So when people talk about it rising, yes, that is a term. Um, so yeah, so that was a beautiful thing. And that was kind of when I felt like, okay, I'm ready to start, making lists of things that we need, which I hadn't done before, superstition and like, I don't want
Mm.
to jinx it kind of thing. And, you know, I was sort of just making it up. My sister was doing the same thing, so I kind of copied her, registry list. Looking back now, there's things that I wish I had done differently, and that's one thing I'd like to support intended parents with. What are the things you need? What are the things you don't need? We decided to put plastic bottles on our registry. Now I wish we had done glass. There's information out there now, especially when you heat up milk, it's not good. The microplastics get into the milk. So these are things that I wish I had known at the time,
Yep.
that I would have done differently if I had known. And then so in April, so the due date was July 6th. So April, is so we're about into the third trimester. That's when things got even more real. Well, one, my sister had her baby in April. And then I kind of woke up to, you know what, I need to like really prepare for this, not just about the things, but like, yes, I'd had a child before 22 years earlier, but there's probably new information out there about how you care for babies. And so I stumbled across one of those online summits, 7 days of all these different speakers, and it's
Yep.
free if you listen to the talk, on the day that it's put out there. So I listened to all the talks, and it just blew my mind with like how much I didn't know and how much new information there was out there. And I got
Well,
really inspired.
you were a different person
A
when you
different,
were, from what you have said, single mother, younger, not supported,
yeah,
spiritually and mentally and health wise in a completely different place. And
yeah,
yeah, I think it's fantastic that you went and did that, and that you had um, you had the revelation that I think I need to do this for myself.
yeah. And I was grateful I had the time to do that. And so, just a couple of little pieces that I want to share now. And this is something that I really feel is so important and I really want to support intended parents with is how do you bond with a baby before they're born when they're not growing in your own body and
Mm,
when they're thousands and thousands of miles away. And, that wasn't even a thing I thought of before, but it just suddenly became very, very important. So some examples of things that I would do, um, you know, him being able to hear my voice, that felt really important. So I started recording little voice memos and sending them in English, obviously, to our surrogate and asking her to play them for him, putting like her
yeah,
phone or the headphones or whatever near her belly. Um, you know, every morning I would, I have a yoga practice and I would add on some meditative time where I would just send, the surrogate good thoughts and blessings and our child good thoughts and blessings, and kind of started thinking about the qualities that, I prayed for that he would have, and just, envisioning them both just surrounded by goodness and love. And um, I read stories to him and sent it. I was knitting a blanket. I made a stuffed animal for him that's very similar to one that I had had ever since an infancy. So I really just found lots of different ways for me to feel connected to him, even though he was so far
I
away.
find your voice so soothing. So I'd
Mm.
love to have recordings of your voice in a meditation, or I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. And actually, the surrogate said something. She was like, "When I hear your voice, I feel like I know you." And
Yeah,
the
it's
baby
very
starts kicking.
reassuring, and I don't know, I'm feeling it like now, like quite it's very warm, and how can I describe it? I almost feel like it's this you're enveloping me in this giant hug.
Mm.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I think that's part of kind of my innate mothering. That's just who I am, and why I love to help people, and want to help other people to feel that warmth towards their own child and for their child to feel that from them. I think that would really
Yeah,
fulfill my purpose in life if I can help other children to come into the world where their intended parents, their parents are really prepared, they feel supported, they feel ready, they already feel bonded with this child when they're born. Like that would just,
What was the other thing that you said there was two things that you wanted to share that you so one of them was about that. What was the other?
oh gosh, well, I'm not sure now that you say it, right? Mom brain.
It'll come to you.
Yeah. But there were just many things, the importance of a postpartum plan.
Yeah,
That was the piece that came to me, what is our plan for feeding and sleeping and getting self-care and getting our own meals in and so one of my dear friends who we were both pregnant together as single mothers. So many years ago, she became a doula. And so I asked her if she'd be willing to be our postpartum doula, and she was just so happy to do that. So
that's
she
great.
sat down with us in a couple of sessions and helped us kind of map out that plan. So that's another piece that I want to support intended parents with. And, it's really very simple, but just kind of what's your plan A, B, and C for for sleeping,
Yeah.
for getting fed, for getting self-care. All of those things are
And I
really
really
important.
think that the postpartum is a part that we actually all forget. And I think it would be interesting to take a survey at some point to see how many people actually did struggle after the child was born. Because, and I have been honest about this, I think on previous episodes. If I haven't, I'll share anyway. But I had a breakdown after we returned to Australia a few months later, which took me a good 18 months to recover from. And
Um,
I truly put it down to the fact that I had been on fertility medication for 10 years. I was a go, 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 go. When you're on this journey, you are to parenthood, you are go, go, go. You're looking for the next thing, the next thing, the next step, the next step. And then when that dream is created, my body basically went into shutdown. My brain, my mind went into shutdown. And it wasn't because I didn't love being a parent, it was because I was so mentally and physically exhausted from what the journey had done to me. And I think it's something that is not spoken about enough. And this is not even about people that go through surrogacy journeys, it's people that go through infertility journeys in general. That they just think once you get pregnant and you have the baby, then everything is fixed. No, there's no
exactly.
such thing as anything being fixed. It's
Yeah.
I'm glad that you've spoken about postpartum because it is a massive part which I think is not spoken about enough. And I also feel, and forgive me if I'm wrong or if you don't see it from this way, but I feel like that people look at you and say, well, you should be grateful because you finally got a child. And so you almost feel ashamed or embarrassed to say that you are struggling mentally because you feel like you don't have a right to complain.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I was going to make that exact same point. Shouldn't I just be grateful? I finally have what I wanted for so long. How can I be struggling? I should just be on cloud nine every minute. And to not have a place to talk about that makes it worse. So to have a place where you can go and share that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
So I'm just 100% advocate for people preparing in advance and then having support lined up, especially if things don't go as planned or, suddenly you hit a physical, emotional, mental bottom because you've been trying for so long and then there's like nothing left in the tank
Yeah.
when you finally have this little child in your arms.
So how many weeks before birth did you arrive in
Yeah.
Tbilisi?
So you had asked about medical. So in May, I believe, we got the notice that the umbilical cord was wrapped around baby's neck.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And that the cervix was starting to shorten.
Oh,
Um, and so we're like, wait, we are not ready at all. My first son was getting ready to graduate from college in May. And we, had a whole trip planned back east for that. And so that's where I really had to rely on my faith. And, this is a piece that if people are open to this, and not everybody is, and that's totally fine. Um, but finding those things that work for you,
Mm,
whether it's from your own, family history and lineage, or just something that you found along the way, or something that you found right then and there, to really try to relax. And because stressing from 5,000 miles away isn't going to help anything.
mm,
So keeping your own nervous system regulated. And so for me, that was connecting to, I really connected with the Orthodox Christian churches in Georgia. I found them to be really beautiful. Or my own connection to kind of like Divine Mother or Mother Mary, or, however you want to call it. That's really what got me through that moment of just like, okay, this is in Great Mother's hands. It's not in mine. I have to just sit back and breathe and keep staying hopeful.
And I would
Um,
urge anyone who doesn't matter what religion you are, because Georgia as a country is Orthodox, but the Orthodox Church, St. George in Tbilisi, which sits on the top of the mountain, is a welcoming church for people of all faiths and all denominations. We actually had a blessing by the priest. He blessed both the girls. Our girls were actually christened Orthodox because my husband is from a Greek background. So having that blessing in that church was of extreme importance to us. But we actually had another lady come with her son, who was of no faith, and the child also had a blessing, which father was very happy to do. And it is such a magnificent church that with a beautiful view. Yeah, very special place.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you found something that resonated for you.
Yeah,
So that's a really important piece that I really want to support people to find. And again, I don't have any agenda. I'm not in particular religion. I just find, whatever faith that you can access, it's really important to do
yeah.
that.
And
So
so yeah, so when did you arrive?
yeah, so we got there 3 weeks early, thinking, okay, we're gonna have plenty of time. So that was a Thursday. Must have been June 15th. 14th or 15th, we arrived. And basically, we had that whole day and the whole next day to try to, acclimate and get ourselves settled and get some groceries and deal with the time difference. And about 11 o'clock on Friday night, we were getting ready to go to bed. I had already turned my phone off. Um, and my husband's phone rings. And this was unusual because he didn't have a phone plan, like an international phone plan.
Oh,
And I'm sitting there like, why didn't you turn your phone off? It's 11:30
yeah.
at night. And so he goes and answers the phone, or maybe they left a message, and he goes and listens to the message, and it's our coordinator saying, your surrogate is in labor. If you want to be there for the baby's birth, you need to leave right now.
Wow.
This is 11:30 at night. We had just gotten there the day
What
before.
part of Tbilisi was you? Do you were in an apartment?
I was, yeah, we were in an Airbnb, way on the west side of the city.
Uh-huh.
Well, we were far away from Guru
Okay.
Shaudi, which is where,
Oh, he was born at Gudashari.
yeah,
That's where
yeah,
my
and that
girls were
was
born there.
yeah, the NICU, and it
Yeah.
wasn't that it was a high risk pregnancy, but I guess that's where New Life at that time was sending all of their surrogates.
Okay.
So I had packed the baby's bag, but I hadn't packed my own bag. So I'm racing around crazy,
Probably
just
jet lagged still.
jet lagged, totally out of my mind, with what do I need? I didn't even know how long we were going to stay. Um, and this was a big piece that was shocking. Our agency coordinator was not going to be at the hospital. It
Oh.
was just me and my husband in this foreign country
And
hospital.
I'll be honest for the listeners out there, let me explain Gudashari Hospital to you and what it looks like, especially if you're going to arrive in the middle of the night. It's basically just a concrete jungle, like planted on a plot of land. It's like an old dodgy government building. This is with just a grey car park around it. It's in an industrial area. There's nothing around there. And it's scary. I find it scary during the daytime, let alone what it would be like in the night. It's dark and dingy and yeah.
It's crazy. And luckily our coordinator had written out a message in Georgian to show to our taxi driver
Yep.
to tell him where to go, because there's this whole thing where you have to pay to get into the parking lot.
Yep.
And we didn't have any Georgian coins on us, so the taxi driver actually paid for us to get in, which was like so kind of him. And he helped us navigate getting up to the right floor. I mean,
Yep.
we were very blessed. So we got up to the right floor. I remember, we ring this doorbell and like we're waiting for 5 minutes and nobody's coming. And we're like, what is going on? Is there anybody even here? How can our surrogate be about to give birth in this like abandoned building? It seemed like, it
Yep.
was just
Yep.
so surreal and bizarre. So finally somebody came, they brought us into this little tiny room and said, wait here. And so, we're out of our minds with like what is happening. And
What
then
time do you think it was then, by then?
it was probably, 12:30 in the
Okay.
morning. And so finally someone comes and gets us and brings us to the labor and delivery room, but my husband had to wait outside.
Of course.
But
Yep.
I came in. Yep. That morning was the morning we were supposed to go and meet our surrogate for the first time at
Oh,
at a at a checkup. So we hadn't even laid eyes on her
oh,
in person.
okay.
So here I walk into this room and she's in labor, and this is the first time we've seen each other in person. And I just go to her and I hug her and kiss her and tell her it's going to be okay. None of these things are like culturally appropriate in Georgia. But
Well,
it's just how,
they are from woman to woman.
yeah,
If it was a man doing it to a woman, that would be a little different. But women
right.
to women, I'd never found any issues with affection with Georgian
Yeah.
women at all.
Yeah, of course, which I didn't know. I just was acting from my heart.
Yeah, of course.
And I felt like, everybody in there was like stone faced. Like
Yes.
nobody was smiling. And I was like, oh my God, is something wrong? And I pantomimed asking for like a cold washcloth because,
Yep.
she's sweating, and they like put a little water on like a rough, scratchy paper towel and give it to me. And I like put that on her forehead, and I'm just like holding her hand. And I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I was in an altered state,
Yeah.
our baby is born.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, he just barely waited, in time for us to get there.
That's
Um,
incredible. And um, excuse me for asking because I don't. I mean, I love birth stories, but this part I don't understand because I've actually never seen anyone give birth because we
um,
weren't there for the birth of our twins because it was COVID and we weren't allowed in. Um, so did he just like pop out? Like what?
yeah,
Yeah, he just popped out.
that's what I recall.
And did the nurses, did they grab him first or did they hand him to you or what happened there?
Yeah, no, so this is another piece that I really want to support intended parents on, is having a plan for how they want that moment to go and communicating it to the hospital staff.
Yep.
We couldn't do any of that because of the language barrier and because we had just barely gotten there in time.
Yeah.
Um, so no, he was born. I actually got a video of him being born, so I know exactly the time. It was 1:28 in the morning. Um, and yeah, they just toweled him off, cut the cord, and whisked him out of the room. And I wanted to stay with the surrogate and just make sure she was okay,
Yeah.
but I felt like I had to go chase after my baby because
Yeah.
I didn't know where they were going to take him. So they take him to this, room, and they weigh him and measure him and do that stuff. And I kept trying to tell them, please don't do that. Let me just hold him. Let me just hold him. I was like begging them. And no, they were just in their very kind of like, hospital procedure mindset and wouldn't listen to me at all. So that was a very painful moment. And,
And I
you know,
actually feel like that's part of what that hospital is about because I've heard other birth stories from other different hospitals in Georgia, and that doesn't happen.
mm, yeah. So maybe so. So that was, not how we wanted things to go.
Yeah,
So I think really having a plan and getting clear on what the hospital is going to do and
yeah,
how you might be able to intervene, or at least ask for like, can I just have a minute with my baby before you do all the things we're going to
yeah.
do? Um, so at that point, my husband was allowed into that room, and, he was in shock. He had no idea that, his child was just born. And,
Yeah.
um, And so, yeah, he's put in this little incubator. I wanted to carry him. It's not like I had just given birth and couldn't carry him. I wanted to hold him, but
Yeah.
nope, that wasn't procedure.
How
So they
many
put him,
kilos was he at birth?
he was, he was 3 kilos.
Ah, good size. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So 6 pounds, 6 ounces.
yeah,
And that was, we felt great about that. And yeah, so they sent us back to our little room, and that's where we lived for 3 days. And, again, very challenging to be in a foreign country where no one spoke English, taking care of a baby, which, we wanted to stay there. We had communicated
yeah,
that we wanted to stay there. We weren't going to leave him and go home or anything. And so we just did 24/7 care. And, I tried my best to do what's called kangaroo care, which is skin to skin.
yeah,
Um, we slept with him we just were next to him the
yeah.
whole time. And, those were some of the things that I was really intentional about. Um,
How long?
unfortunately,
Well, sorry, keep going.
unfortunately, our surrogate decided she wasn't willing to see us or the baby.
Ah, see, that's
And
what I
so
was just about to ask you. Yeah,
So she was staying in that same hospital,
yeah,
but and so one piece that I had forgotten to mention earlier, because we knew we would be there without any family members, I looked into having a Georgian nanny to support us. And so that same day that our son was born, we were supposed to meet the nanny for the first time. Um, but she ended up coming to that hospital that same day, so the 17th. And she met us and she met the baby. And so she was a huge help with translation.
okay,
She,
great.
yeah, communicated with our surrogate. And that's how we found out that no, it was just for her, it was better to not meet us in person and to not see the baby.
Wow,
Um,
okay.
which, we had to absolutely respect. And it was very sad for me because I know best practices, it would have looked differently. And, our son would have had a chance to smell her again and hear her voice again and be held
Yeah.
by her. But that wasn't to be.
But that's okay, Rachel. Everyone makes their own personal decisions going into this journey, and um, I hope you're okay with that now.
Yeah. Well, and we've actually worked with a specialist who helps with birth trauma. Really any trauma, any birth is traumatic, just because you go from, being in a womb to being out
Yeah.
in the world. Um, and our story is a little extra difficult, or just separation, because he went from, being gestated in this person who he smelled and heard for 9 months to
Mm.
never seeing or smelling her again. And so there's a little extra work that we've had to do, but I really feel like we have supported him to clear that and heal that. And there might be more down the road that needs to be worked with, but he's absolutely bonded with us. And yeah, there's no sign of any kind of trauma at this point.
Yeah,
So I'm really grateful for that.
it's fantastic.
Um,
That's good. I'm really, yeah,
yeah.
I'm really pleased to hear that. How did you go? How did you go with the exit?
Yeah, so we hadn't chosen a name. um, I had the name that I liked, but my husband hadn't signed on to that. And so, the day or two after he was born, they're like, you can't leave here until you've chosen a
Yeah,
name.
because I've got to
Because-
release that form that you need with a
Exactly.
name on it.
Exactly. So that kind of pressurized us to come up with a name. And the name that I wanted was Remiel, which is the Archangel of Hope,
Lovely.
because we had given up hope so many times, and yet here
Yeah.
he was. And so it's Remy for short. Um, so that, and Angelo is his middle name, which is also another angel name. And it's my husband's grandfather's name. And but they had gotten the name misspelled. The middle name was misspelled on that
Could you
form.
misspell Angelo?
Yeah. So, and luckily our nanny caught that because it
Okay.
was all in Georgian. And I'm like, can you read that and make
Yeah.
sure it's correct? And she was like, oh no, that's not correct.
Okay.
So that took another day to like get sorted. Like the paperwork in Georgia, it just
Yes.
can be very
I
frustrating.
know. I know.
So So that added a little time. And then also he had some jaundice. So they were worried about that. And he was maybe going to have to be under a special light and everything. But luckily, he cleared that enough. So we left at the end of the 3 days. I was driving myself crazy in this tiny little room, and the food was
Yeah.
terrible. People talk about the food being terrible at Guru Shouty, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be the least thing I'm worried about. But actually, you need your strength. You need protein. Like all we would get with these little cups of like broth and some white bread and some apple juice. Like that's what they fed us. And so luckily our nanny like cooked us some actual meals and brought them to
Okay.
us. And so I was very ready to get out. So we left at the end of 3 days, and yeah, that all went okay. We went back to our little Airbnb, and we organized the embassy visit. So, those of you who have already been on this journey in Georgia or who are going to do it, it's a whole thing getting the passport, and there's a lot of concern and worry and fear and rumors and misinformation and
You're very
just
lucky being
differing.
a US
Yeah,
citizen with the
yeah,
fact that you guys have an embassy in Tbilisi.
yeah, we are. And so I way over prepared. I brought in like a stack, like 6 inches tall of paperwork, which they didn't ask for any of it.
Yep,
But at least I had it if they were going to ask to prove that that my husband was a U.S. citizen. That was the
of
main
course.
thing, because that's how our child Remy would get U.S. citizenship. So we went in on July 3rd. That was our appointment. July 4th is a holiday in the US, so it was
Yep.
closed. But July 5th, they had our passport, and I hadn't even applied for an emergency passport. So they had mistakenly given us an emergency passport. Um, However, this time the embassy had misspelled my husband's name on the
Oh,
consular report of birth abroad.
okay.
So that took us a couple of weeks to sort out. But we had decided we wanted to spend until mid-August in Georgia anyway, in Tbilisi. We wanted to travel. We wanted to just be there. We didn't have
Lovely.
anything to rush home to. We had some beautiful house sitters taking care of our dog and our cat and our plants and our garden. So we just wanted to have an adventure and not get
How
Remy on a
special to be
plane.
able to do that at the start of Remy's life.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. I was homesick as well, and
Yeah,
it's a challenge, but we had this wonderful nanny who did 3 nights a week, so we got to sleep 3 nights a
yeah.
week. We got to go out and enjoy Tbilisi, and we also took Remy to museums and live Georgian music and restaurants. We took a trip up to Kazbegi and the
Yep.
Caucasus Mountains, which was incredible. We have some amazing photos from that. We had a pediatrician come to the house. That's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing that happens in Georgia that doesn't
Yep.
happen in the US.
No.
So that was lovely to get that support. I think she came, I don't know, every 2 weeks or something. And we also connected with some other intended parents there probably through the WhatsApp group or the Facebook group.
Yep.
And so, we'd go out to meals together or get our babies together. And it was just great to have that sense
It's
of
lovely,
community.
isn't it?
It's really important. So I highly recommend that.
And
We did
tell
a
me, were you happy the way you were supported through your agency through the process?
Well, like I said, that they kind of dropped us when it was time to go to the hospital. Nobody came from New Life
I'm very
during
surprised about that, I must say.
our whole 3 days of Guru Shouty, not a peep other than helping us with the paperwork. And yeah, I felt really dropped, and I made that comment to them when I went in to get some paperwork, and they said, oh well, we just don't have the staffing for it or something. But that's another piece that I'm like, if I can support intended parents through that phase, I think it's really important to not feel dropped, or like that there's some like continuity of care kind of from beginning, middle, and end. If you're not going to get it through your agency, it's
Yeah.
important to get it somewhere.
What
Um,
advice have you got for people that are about to start this journey, or maybe people that are currently on this journey?
Well, I have so much advice. That's what I want to do for a living. Um, but I guess one final thing I wanted to share is once we got home, in mid-August, so after Remy was 2 months, it was kind of like starting all over again, figuring out where do we get support, how are we going to cook our meals? Now we have a house and animals to take care of, and we have to, kind of think about working again. And
Yeah,
so we struggled to build a village, even though this is our community. Both of our moms live in the same town we live in. I thought that, all those people who we had sent the blog out to were going to be like beating down our door to like hold Remy, and they just weren't. I feel like our culture is very individualistic. People don't like particularly like children. I feel like some people do, but like as a whole, I don't feel like babies are particularly welcomed in our culture. And so at least that's been my experience. So the importance of building that village, of finding ways to not feel so isolated, because like you experienced, there's a real lack of support, and there can be some real tough moments. And like, I won't lie, I've had the experience of like, what did I do? Did I make a terrible mistake by going through this whole journey of surrogacy? Now, 99% of the time I'm, so grateful and I'm so in love with our little boy, but there are some really tough moments. So I think be aware that those might come up and have some things in place to support yourself through them. That would be
yeah.
my.
We were lucky. We had you're saying that you felt like people didn't like babies. Well, we're from a European background, and we couldn't have had more support. We
Mm,
Everyone was so happy to see us when we got back, and we had people, there every day wanting to help. But I felt alone, even though I was surrounded by
mm,
people.
mm,
And it's taken me, the twins are 4 next week. It's taking me all this time to build up my strength and mentally get around it. And I'm in such a good place now. I'm
mm,
feel so I'm proud of myself. And that, I don't say that very often.
mm,
And I
mm,
think in this journey, I think we all forget that we need to celebrate those little milestones. Doesn't matter how small, whether as intended parents or as parents. Well, today I didn't yell as much, or today I managed to chuck on a load of washing. Well done, you. Or whatever those really small moments, we have to thank ourselves for them.
Absolutely. No, no, I'm so glad that, yeah, you've come to that place. So that's beautiful. I know that there's been like anthropological research that says that like human beings were meant to be raised with like at least 8 adults around them at all times, and this whole like two-parent household thing isn't enough. It's double as good as a one-parent household, but that we really need more than two. So, and with the people that I work with, my coaching clients, a lot of times they're like, I shouldn't need help. Like there's this very kind of individualistic perspective, or we're like, I don't want to be a burden, or this is my baby, so this is my problem kind of thing. And so I really support people to find ways to, whether it's maybe some people don't want others around, but how is it that you can get out and get a massage, or go for a run, or connect to your girlfriends, or how is it that you can kind of remember who you are and bring your own strengths and gifts to the situation, instead of just feeling really depleted and exhausted and like the well is dry.
Yeah,
So yeah, I really want to support new parents with that.
it's fantastic. Rachel, I have absolutely loved chatting with you today. And I wish your husband and Remy absolutely all the best for the future, and your older son as well. I hope his graduation went well and he's doing well in his life.
He's launched, he's doing great.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic. And again, I'm going to mention your website, www.intendedparentsupportcoach.com, to speak to Rachel directly. You're welcome to visit her website, send her an email, send her a chat. Of course, you can message me and ask for her details too if you have forgotten. Rachel, again, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so grateful for to you for sharing your journey and your heart and your soul and everything. And I
Mm.
just sincerely wish you all the best.
Well, I'm so grateful for this podcast that you're doing. It's just, and just all of the work that you do to support and build networks of intended parents in Georgia. So it's a huge service that you and Anita do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.